And mic check, Czech Republic, checkers chess, checkmate. Are we live? All right. Hello, my name is Phillips, and this is a little dialogue about Colombia. So, first let's look at some of the history of Spain. About 200 years ago, it formed a republic that was modeled after the United States, but like many other Latin American countries, due to the kind of lack of experience with that form of government, it's undergone a lot of political turbulence. From the 50s to the 70s was a period known as La Violencia, in which right-wing Marxist guerrilla groups and liberal left-wing groups combated against each other and at different points held power and persecuted their enemies. However, Colombia has had a stable regime for about the last 35 years. So, exploring the characteristics of Colombia's economy, one thing historically has been very reliant on natural resources as a source of revenue for the country. It's one of the richest countries in terms of oil, which also makes up a significant portion of its GDP. It's led to a significant period of growth recently in Colombia. Historically, based on its geography, it's very rich in natural resources like crude oil, as well as coal and also agricultural products, coffee, cacao, bananas, and other things like that. Backbone of the Colombian economy for a long time. Unfortunately, though, as Colombia has moved along, it's begun to modernize very rapidly and is shifting to growth in the tech and service industries, the tourist industry, and has continued to achieve high levels in the agricultural to the shift from blue-collar to white-collar work in America around the 40s and 50s. And one of the results of this has been very high inflation, represented by this balloon, right? And, so high inflation has been a major problem in Colombia. Rates persistently over 6%, and the central bank, Banco de República, has not managed to curb these rates very much in the last 3 decades. Targeted rate is currently 3%, and optimistic Colombian economists do predict that they'll be able to reach this rate, considering that there's been a lot of turbulence, specifically with commodity shocks in 2014, which caused a lot of inflation problems to get worse due to bad harvests and a global dip in the oil markets. And then obviously post-COVID, Colombia has managed to have a fairly strong recovery. But that brings me to the second point about Colombia's economy. A key trait is the fact that in the rapidly modernizing economy, many of the workers are not properly educated so that they can actually contribute to the new needs of the labor force. And that's where I get to That's where we get to Colombia's economy being like a fishbowl. The only problem is, you can see in this fishbowl, there's hardly any water and it's swarming with fishes. The result of this is that the fishes are not able to properly swim. Workers are graduating from school with skills that are more or less antiquated compared to what the new demands of the labor market are asking of them, and that's leaving these people underemployed. So unemployment has been persistently high, around 10% for the last 30 years. It has dropped recently, but of concern is the underemployment rate, which I think is a better metric, because it's a problem with Colombia where the people are not necessarily equipped to actually find work in a rapidly modernizing economy. And so what does this mean, right? Measuring how a lot of Colombians, even though they are technically employed, very informally and are not necessarily achieving the most possible productivity from their work. And that brings up another problem, because as you have this new period of growth in the modern industrial sectors, there's one group, the less educated Colombians, and they're being left behind a lot. Especially in rural areas, many of these peasants do not have a proper education, not through any fault of their own, just through a lack of investment, and declines in the mining, construction, and farming industries have all led to the rise of one particular delicious, very familiar white pixie dust we all know as cocaine. This is only for demonstration, not real. So anyway, this has been a major problem. Colombia exports 70% of the world's cocaine. And part of the reason for this is it's a very profitable drug, very lucrative, and for many people, it's the best economic opportunity that they have. According to Colombia reports, about 60,000 families or more actively farming cocaine individually. And how do we actually curtail this? It has social effects, but also economic effects. It is 4% of the country's GDP. Well, that's where we get to the solution, I think. So in the last 40 seconds here, what I'll tell you is the main thing is it's got to be education. And the highlighters and the other highlighters and the bookmarks educated. But it's not just that, right? In addition to funding more education, it also needs to be higher quality so that people are actually modernizing and graduating school with the skills they need to be successful. On more education, more building of schools and infrastructure in rural areas is to fund that, cutting the payroll taxes while increasing other taxes like sales tax. And cutting them could allow companies to take on more workers and additionally invest more money into on-the-job training, kind of bridge the gap in educational attainment between different workers and include more people. So in short, if we do all these things, then many people will be happy and a few less people will be fed, and that's very good.
Yeah!